Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered with Sid. I'm host Sid Verma, and I don't really know how to explain this without making it sound more dramatic than it actually is, but I've been thinking a lot about my childhood recently. I know that's a pretty broad thing to say, right? I'm 15 years old. I'm not sitting here with decades of life experience telling you that in my childhood was the best part of my life and everything just went downhill from there because I hate my job and my life just sucks. But I'm literally still a child in a whole lot of ways, right? And I think that's actually part of why this has been on my mind so much because I don't feel like my childhood is over, right? But I also don't feel like I'm completely inside of it anymore. And that's a pretty weird place to be, right? Because I'm old enough to the point where I can look back at parts of my childhood and miss parts of it, right? But I'm still young enough that I'm still technically living through it, right? And recently I've been thinking about why my childhood, or just childhood in general, youth, it seems so much simpler, right? Not necessarily better, but just simpler. Because when I look back at being younger, I don't think I was happy every single day. Obviously not, right? I had bad days. I got bored some days. I got annoyed. I got upset by really dumb things. I had some problems. But my life felt smaller. And I think that might be the difference there, right? Because when you're a kid, your world can be incredibly small. It's limited to like what? Your house, your school, the friends you see at your school, kids from your neighborhood, and maybe a couple places your family takes you, like your cousin's house, and whatever you're currently obsessed with, right? For some kids, that might be Minecraft, it might be dinosaurs, because those are the two things that I was obsessed with. It might be a random TV show, it might be a sport, and somehow that's enough to truly feel satisfied, right? I remember being younger and being able to completely obsessed with something, right? Not in the way that people talk about being obsessed with something now, right? They just scroll about it on TikTok, watch YouTube videos on it, and then move on to the next thing. But I mean, genuinely spending months on the same thing, right? When you're a kid, your interests didn't need to be useful, right? You don't need to ask if they're going to help you get into a good college or if you can uh, gain some valuable life skills from them, if you can turn them into a business, right? You don't need to build a personal brand around your interests. You can just like something for the sake of liking something. And I think that becomes a lot harder the older you get, right? Because eventually you start feeling like everything has to lead to somewhere, right? You spend an afternoon playing a video game, and then some part of you thinks, hey, I should probably be doing something else, right? You spend a day relaxing, and you just wonder if you wasted it, right? You find something you enjoy, and you immediately start asking whether you can make it productive, right? I don't think that's necessarily bad. There are things I care about now that I definitely didn't care about when I was younger. I care about what I'm going to do with my life. I care about the person I want to become. I care about my future. But sometimes I miss not having to justify every single day. Because when you're 6 years old and someone asks you what you want to be when you grow up, you can say anything, right? Oh, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a professional athlete. I want to be president of the United States, right? Because nobody expects you to have a plan. The future is just this distant thing that happens to some other version of you, right? And then at some point that changes, right? You realize that the future is actually coming at you, right? You start thinking about high school, start thinking about college, jobs, where you're going to live in the future. And suddenly the future starts taking up a lot of space in the present, right? You're not just sitting in a classroom anymore. You're thinking about what that class means for the next class. You're not just spending time with your friends. You're aware that eventually high school will end. You're not just going to have a summer, you're only going to have a few weeks. And I think that awareness changes everything, right? Because when you're a kid, a summer can feel endless, right? You wake up every single day excited, energetic. There's so much time. And you get older and you realize that summer is basically just a countdown, right? June, July, August, bam, school's right back at you. And I don't know if time moves faster as you get older, because I don't think it does. Probably doesn't. But it feels faster because you understand what you're actually losing. I think that, I think this is the part that I find strangest, right? Because you don't know when something is going to become nostalgic. When you're living through something, it usually doesn't feel important enough to remember. You don't just wake up one random Tuesday and think, hey, this is going to be one of the last ordinary Tuesdays of my childhood. You just wake up, go to school, go through the motions, come home, talk to your friends, do your homework, do whatever. And then and then years later you remember some completely random day and realize that you would actually like to experience that again. Not because anything extraordinary happened, not because anything big happened, maybe nothing happened. And that's almost the point, right? I think most of the things we miss are ordinary, right? Our old bedroom, or the whole old house we used to live in, right? The route you used to take to school, the people you saw every day, the games you used to play, the way your family used to be. And you don't realize any of it, and you don't think any of it is special because it's just your life, right? That's probably one of the most frustrating things about nostalgia, because you only understand that something was a good part of your life after you can no longer live it exactly the same way. And sometimes I wonder if that means I'm already doing that right now, right? And maybe there are things in my life that I will miss years from now and have absolutely no idea. Maybe I'm living through things that the future me would just kill to get back to. And I have no way of knowing which things they are, right? And I think being 15 is a particularly weird age for this, right? Because I'm old enough to understand that my life is going to change a lot. A lot's going to happen. But I'm young enough that I have almost no idea where those changes are actually going to look like, right? 3 years ago, I was in middle school. 3 years from now, I could be in an entirely different state. I could be surrounded by completely different people. I could have an entirely different daily routine. I have no idea whether that excites me or if it's terrifying. Honestly, it's probably both, right? I want to grow up. I want to have more freedom. I want to eventually decide where I live, what I do. I want to experience new things I haven't experienced yet. I want to meet people that I haven't met yet, right? I don't want to stay exactly the same forever. No one does. But there is something uncomfortable about knowing that the life you have now is temporary. I mean, it's not because it's bad. It's probably the opposite of that, right? Sometimes the fact that you know that something is going to end is what makes that moment so much more valuable. And that's a pretty annoying realization because you really can't do anything about it, right? You can't stop time by just appreciating that moment harder. You can't preserve a summer just because you know you'll miss it. You can't make every ordinary moment feel meaningful. Sometimes you're going to be bored. Sometimes you're going to be annoyed. Sometimes you're just going to waste away and rot, right? Rot a day away. And then years later, you might remember that day and still miss it anyway, right? I've also started to wonder whether we actually miss the things we think we miss. And what I mean by that is that, for example, when people say they miss playing an old video game, I don't think they necessarily want to play that game for 12 hours a day. When I play an old game I used to play, I might not even want to play it anymore. But I still feel something. And I think what I miss isn't the game. It's everything around the game, right? It's being younger. It's where you played the game. It's the people who you played the game with. It's having fewer things to think about. It's the fact that at the time I had no idea that I was going to miss this moment. I think that's why nostalgia can be so weird, right? You aren't really trying to go back to a specific moment. You're trying to get back to the person you were when you lived in that moment, and you can't. And that's the part that makes nostalgia so painful, right? You can replay that game. You can go back to that place. You can look through old photographs, but you can't completely become the person who experienced those things for the first time. That version of you is gone. And I don't mean that in a depressing way. I just mean that's just what growing up is about, right? You keep becoming someone new. And I think that's where nostalgia gets misunderstood, right? I don't think people actually want to go back. I don't want to go back. I don't want to be 8 years old again. I don't want to give up the things I've learned. I don't want to have no control over my life. I don't want to go back to being completely dependent on my parents. I want to grow up. I want to see what happens. I want to become someone I can't currently imagine being. And I think you want to move forward and still miss what you're leaving behind. Those aren't contradictions. I think that's probably the most difficult part of growing up, that you can be excited about your future and still be sad that your present won't last forever. You can want to leave and still love where you came from. You can be ready for something new and still miss that old thing. I think sometimes we act like growing up means you have to choose, right? Whether you're excited about the future or stuck with the past. I don't think that's true. I mean, you can do both. And honestly, I don't think growing up is the problem. I think the problem is that growing up can make it harder to actually be where you are, right? When you're a kid, you don't spend that much time thinking about whether you're using your childhood correctly. You just have a regular day. Now I think a lot more about what I'm doing with my time, right? And that's pretty useful. I have goals for myself, stuff I want to accomplish. I don't just want to coast and drift through life. But there is a point where you become so focused on the life you're trying to build that you forget you were already living one. And I think that's something I have to remind myself of because not every day has to be story. Not every moment needs to be captured. Not every experience needs to teach me something. Sometimes I can just have a good day. I can go hang out with my friends and not turn it into some profound memory. Sometimes you can just play a game. Sometimes I can just do nothing. And maybe years from now, I'll still remember it anyway. Maybe I won't. I think that's okay because you don't have to know that something is going to become nostalgic to know that it was worthwhile experiencing. I don't know if my childhood was actually simpler. Maybe I just understood less. Maybe my world was just smaller. Maybe I had fewer things to worry about. Maybe being a kid is just different because you haven't learned how temporary everything is yet. But I do think there's something I miss about it. Not necessarily the exact things I did, more the feeling that there was so much time, that the future was just so far away, that an ordinary day could just be enough for me. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life trying to recreate that. I don't think you can, right? Because growing up is supposed to mean that you're changing, that you are supposed to become someone different. You're supposed to leave some things behind in the past. But I also don't want to become obsessed with the future that I miss the present while it's happening. Because one day I'm gonna look back on this period of my life. And I'm gonna probably remember things that I think are completely ordinary, right? A random summer day, a random conversation, a place I might have driven past like 1,000 times, maybe something that happens this week that I don't even think twice about. And I think that's probably the best reason I can come up with to pay attention to your life while you're living it. Because not every moment is secretly profound. It isn't. Most moments are just normal, right? But when your life is just pieced together by normal moments, and eventually some of them are going to be ones that you miss. So I don't think the goal is to hold on to your childhood forever. I don't think the goal is to just make every moment meaningful. I think it's just to occasionally realize that you are here, that you're living a life that at some point is going to be in the past. And maybe the good days aren't always behind you. Sometimes you might still be in those good days. Well, that's all the more I have for you guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.